So let's ask one of those Democrats what he thinks. House Minority Whip Steny Hoyer is with me. So, sir, the president says it is your fault that you and other Democrats want a government shutdown. Do you?
That's absurd. The only person who's talked about shutting down the government in the last 4 months has been President Trump himself. He said that might be good for the government. It'd be bad for the government, bad for the American people, and we don't want it. Now, we don't have the votes to either shut it down or keep it open. The fact is that Republicans, as you've discussed just earlier in your program, have consciously shut down the government to try to take the government hostage, have the ACA repealed.
You do have the votes to keep it open, though, sir. I mean, respectfully, you do have the votes to keep it open if other Republicans vote against it.
The Republicans, we had a no drama, keep the government open, extend the debt limit in September. 90 Republicans voted against that. Every Democrat voted for it. And so the government kept open. What we are now confronted with is a take it or leave it proposition on a CR and on a supplemental, both of which we think do not properly do the business of government. So we may not vote for things that are jammed down our throat, but we don't want to shut down the government. We think the Republicans should not to shut down the government. And if they want to do things purely on a partisan basis, which has been the fact we've been confronted with, then frankly it's their responsibility to vote for their partisan bills. And if they don't vote for their partisan bills, the result may well be the shutting down of government, which would be a bad policy, but a policy which they pursued in the 90s and a policy which they pursued just a couple of years ago. But we have no intention of wanting to shut down the government.
I hear that, but it also sounds like you're saying that Democrats really don't have a role here. When I mean they do. I mean, what must be included in a stopgap bill for you to come to the table, or what can you just not vote for? Well,
look, we think a simple CR, which has no other policy in it, which is essentially what we did in September, which we voted for. We understand that policy, but only in the event that they'll do some work in the interim to try to do the right things that we need to do to keep government funded, that we need to invest in the CHIP program to keep the CHIP program operating. What they've included, we understand, in the CHIP program is a short-term extension, and we already have states saying, even in light of that short-term extension, they're going to have to shut down because they can't plan for an insurance program, which is obviously not a month-to-month program.
Let's tell viewers what you're talking about. You're talking about the Children's Health Insurance Program. This
Children's
is critically
Health Insurance
important
Program
for 9 million children across this country.
9 million children who, as you pointed out, are in between Medicaid and so they don't get help there, and they need help.
This was a bipartisan effort. It ran out of funding at the end of September. 16 states are going to have no money for this come the end of next month. 20 more states tack onto that with no funding for this a few months later. Are you willing to vote against a spending bill at some point that does not fully fund CHIP again? I mean, are you willing to say that is my stake in the ground and this is what has to be funded?
That certainly is a stake in the ground, because we need to make sure CHIP can effectively operate for those 9 million children. Frankly, we've had a bill that's been passed twice through the House of Representatives, which we have made very clear to the Majority Leader and to the Republicans. It's a partisan bill. It's not going anywhere in the Senate. It didn't go anywhere in the Senate. We were very close to making a deal, but as one of your commentators pointed out, they wouldn't make a deal without cutting further in the Affordable Care Act, which cut health care for children, cut vaccination programs for children, and other programs for children. We didn't think that was paying Peter to pay Paul. We thought that was bad policy. So we said, we've already agreed on the authorizing, so let's agree on the funding. And by the way, as was pointed out, they repealed the one provision of the ACA, cost $17.5 billion to do so, and they didn't pay for that.
Let me ask you something.
I want to be paid for.
I want to get you quickly on the tax bill, because I know you hate it, but it's about to be signed into law.
It's a bad bill.
You called it a perverse giveaway to wealthy Americans. I hear you that the biggest cuts are for corporations and for the wealthiest Americans. However, that make money certain ways, right? For example, the loophole for hedge fund managers that the president said he'd get rid of, that's not gone. I hear you, but here's my other question. When you look at the independent analysis of this, the Tax Policy Center, part of Brookings, the oldest think tank in the country, says 80% of American families will feel a tax cut next year. We'll see an actual tax cut next year. That is more than just the wealthy Americans, no?
No, I think, well, no, that's correct.
Right.
They will get a tax cut.
Yeah.
Some people will get a very small tax cut, and some people will get a large tax cut. They had $1.5 trillion of borrowed money, increase in the deficit, increase in the debt, and that money was on the table. They talked about how we needed to help working people. What did they do? Yes, they gave some tax relief to working people, 17% of that $1.5 trillion. 83% of that $1.5 trillion they gave to the top 1% of America. Our opinion is that is perverse. That's not helping working men and women by giving 83% of all the resources to the wealthiest in America. So yes, they're right. Somebody may get $10, maybe get $100, maybe even get $1,000, while the top 1% gets $50,000 or $60,000. Yeah. Well, okay. No, it is more than. Let's say it's $1,800. Let's say it's $1,800. They phase out that $1,800 in 2005. Why did they do that? Because to meet scoring rules in the Senate. But they don't phase out the top 1%'s resources. So, yes, I understand Brookings says that 80% gets some money. They do. But the overwhelming majority of the money was not used for the struggling family making $59,000 that Paul Ryan talked about on the floor and that Mr. Brady talked about on the floor yesterday.
I have to leave it there, but it is a true and fair point that the corporate tax cuts do not sunset and the individual tax cuts do sunset unless they are extended. Thank you very much, Congressman. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Thanks a lot.
Growing concern on Capitol Hill over attempts to discredit special counsel